Welcome. I'm Harmony Slater, your host of the Finding Harmony podcast. Over the past 20 years, I've taught thousands of yoga teachers and students to explore the intersection between ancient wisdom and modern everyday life, using mind-body practices to heal, awaken, and manifest their dreams from the inside out. This podcast is a sanctuary for those feeling overwhelmed by life's challenges. Are you ready to jump in and discover how these challenges aren't actually in the way, but are the way to finding harmony? Let's invite the magic back in. So you may be noticing a theme on the Finding Harmony podcast this year. What if healing isn't about fixing isolated symptoms, but it's about helping the whole human system come back into balance? Body, mind, emotions, spirit. And so today's episode, we're speaking with two humans who are very close to my heart and also my genetic pool as well. They are two practitioners who are doing just this in their work, bridging the gap, really working with the body, but then also integrating not just body work, but somatic therapy, shamanic breathwork, movement-based practices, and consciousness-oriented healing. And so today we're speaking with my cousin, Kyra Klein, and her partner, Matt Johnson, who are the co-creators of Body Language. And this is Whole Human Healing. They're located in Squamish, British Columbia. And Kyra is just a gifted healer. She's a trained physiotherapist, but really uses her intuitive skills with her own body awareness practices. She's also a yoga teacher and also a shamanic healer and practitioner as well. And so just bringing her beautiful energy and spirit into all of the work that she does. She helps people reconnect with their bodies, helps them to restore alignment on multiple levels, and does so with such a deep joy and wisdom to her work. And Matt, who is just a very beautiful human being, he not only does very special guided body work, he has a deeply integrative approach, weaving together somatic therapy, breathwork, and sound healing, using shamanic tools and trauma-informed somatic counseling. He's trained with incredible healers that you might know, like Gabor Mate, and he is gifted at helping people explore their unconscious emotions, all of those parts that we've abandoned or forgotten or rejected within ourselves, bringing them back into harmony, back into unison, and helping the nervous system show up in a more regulated, more balanced way. And so the work that the two of them bring to the sessions that they offer is truly inspired. And they really both help individuals feel more alive, more clear, more embodied, and more connected with their highest self. And so today we're going to speak about how the body holds history, how emotions affect physical reactions and sicknesses or illnesses, and how recovery necessarily includes healing and reintegration on all of these levels, spiritual, emotional, mental, as well as physical, that it's not just about doing physical things for the physical body, but we need to actually get to the root of the pattern, which is deeply embedded not only in the nervous system, but is often found in other realms like spiritual or emotional layers as well. So this conversation is really for you. if you're curious about embodied healing and using breathwork as a doorway to subconscious patterns and the wisdom that the body often speaks before our conscious awareness in our mind knows what it's saying, and that our body holds a lot of emotion that needs to be resolved in order for meaningful change and true integration to happen. So I think you're going to love this conversation. And truly, these are two of my favorite human beings on the planet. And I'm so happy and grateful to share their magic with you here in this conversation today. So let's dive in.
Hi, welcome to the Finding Harmony podcast. This is your host, Harmony Slater. I'm your co-host, Russell Case, and I am in charge now.
We're in trouble.
This is really interesting. We've got a couple of old friends, and we also have a very interesting relationship.
Old and new.
Old and new. This is Harmony's first cousin, Kyra, and her partner, Matt. And we discovered Kyra after I downloaded the Ancestry.com app, which was a shock. And so I wonder if we don't want to go into that whole palaver.
That's like a whole podcast.
That's a whole story about your grandmother, which is exciting to be able to say that. But I wonder if maybe...
Well, Kyra knows the story better than I do because she lived it.
Well, no, we don't want to get into it.
I know, but you could just say something nice about it.
Do you want to say something nice about it?
Sure. Yeah, just that I received an email from, I think it was Russell.
He was the detective. It might have been me. Might have been both of us. I think I sent you an Instagram message.
I was Mr. Detective, though.
Yeah, that you said, oh, I think we're cousins.
I definitely did that to Eli, your brother. I definitely texted him at 2:00 in the morning, and I said, I think we're cousins.
Yeah.
And he said, I know, which was a shock. That was the most surprising email I've ever received, was someone saying that to me. It's like, oh yeah, I know all about you.
Yeah. And in this case, just receiving that email and then I guess just following that, and I didn't know. But just the chats that we had afterwards, so beautiful, so connected, and the recognition of so many similarities as well that came through. And the reason I had gone on Ancestry in the first place was actually a Groupon. My brother Eli sent the Groupon during COVID, and we were like, well, maybe this is an interesting thing to do, to find out, our background and our ancestry, and not really even to connect, but just to know.
I think the most fascinating thing for me is seeing how, at least in Harmony's side of the family, how the two of you appear to be, and I don't mean to offend any of your family members that are listening.
None of them listen.
They sometimes randomly listen. Is that the two of you have more in common, both genetically and in your personality and your energy and your interests, than anyone else. And it's almost like sisters lost at birth. And it just speaks so much to this kind of, this ancestral connection that you have, that the two of you share this. And I've witnessed the two of you on a spiritual journey together make this kind of deep psychic connection, this deep energetic connection that comes at a total shock. At the same time, for our listeners at home, maybe, Kyra, you could introduce your partner, and maybe the two of you can talk about how you met and energetically how you guys align, besides like your genitals and stuff like that. But just like talk about how you got together.
Yeah, this is my partner, Matt.
Is that who I am? Okay.
Yeah, partner, Matt. We actually met on Hinge, the dating app.
Oh, that's unhinged.
Yeah,
We've all met online. That's so weird.
Oh, you guys as well, yeah. Well, I'd say we collided.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of a shocking soul collision, where your first interaction with this person on a first date, instead of being, oh, she's cute, maybe this is worth pursuing, is fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Just this collision of, oh crap, this is really serious. It's instantly serious. What are we going to do?
We said the same thing, Harm. Like, uh-oh.
That's
not
what you
good.
think.
No, we've had a wild ride through romance in 7 years or so.
And just a lot of growth, right? And growing together and evolution, evolving together. And I think that actually
And healing.
that healing.
Yeah.
Like I feel one of my friends asked me, what do you guys like to do together? What hobbies or things do you enjoy doing? And
Like
we have
snorting
things
tobacco.
we have things we like to do together. But the response was, we like to heal. We heal together, and we don't just work together, but we help each other grow and evolve. And so, yeah, I feel that was clear, the soul connection. And I believe in soul connections. And it was as if meeting someone that I already knew and that we had a big history that was quite entangled and complex and maybe not always so pretty. And it was like this second chance to create something beautiful out of us meeting again, coming back together and remembering.
Well, and pretty right out the gate, our path towards one another demanded that we started healing. It wasn't like, go on a few dates, see if you guys like each other, and then maybe there's some growth over time. It was, okay, it's been 3 months. Well, Matt, you're going to be crushed into near oblivion through a unlabelable and undiagnosable gut injury and spend 3 months in a coma. And Kyra's going to clean you up when you shit the bed.
Hardcore.
Why did you stick it out with a guy that was in a coma for 3 months? What happened there?
Well,
what is it that the two of you see in each other that would create that kind of care?
Well, for me, it was, other than the fact she's beautiful, was this instantaneous recognition that we were both arriving to the pursuit of connection with absolutely no bullshit. Just looking to make a heart deep, really real connection right out the gate. Our first date was almost like a list of demands, as much as it was getting to know one another. It was, I'm exhausted by this. I'm tired by that. Everyone's performing this way and wearing this mask. I'm sick of all this dancing. I just want to have a real connection. Can we do this? And we were both more or less describing the same stuff. The funny thing is, Kyra didn't even create her dating profile. Her friends basically connected her to me. So
I did not.
yeah, so we just arrived in a really confrontingly honest place together, and that's kind of been a driving theme through our entire relationship, is to do the confronting work that through turning towards one another, you turn towards in yourself.
Yeah. That's amazing. Using your relationship as a mirror for spiritual growth and awakening is like profoundly deep work. And it is the work, actually. It's what we're here to do. So that you saw that in each other and recognized it and said, let's do this, is amazing.
Well, and to be clear, that's been a constant process, like a constant challenging process, right?
Yeah.
One of my teachers says you will always find yourself in relationship with someone precisely as wounded as you are, whatever that specifically means. That's not like a damaged goods with damaged goods parable. It's the fact that your unconscious mind or your soul will see in the other person exactly the characteristics and experiences that will help you turn towards what needs healing and support within yourself.
So for Harmony and I, we're both children of working class parents who are striving to be middle class, getting our university education, getting at it through the arts, and then using our spiritual path for healing for all of this unmediated violence and trauma that we experience as children, abandonment and feelings of uselessness and the whole bit. Then kind of supercharged when we met each other. It was like, oh shit, you're exactly like me.
Yeah.
But in the opposite sex form. And like that, there's a kind of incredible gravity to that. It sounds like there's a parallel for you guys. You guys were both athletes. Were you both spiritual workers when you met? What is this stomach disease you have?
How did you end up in this coma?
So, I mean, like, hard no. I was definitely not a spiritual person when we met. And for the vast majority of my life, I have lived as a Western indoctrinated, right-minded, hyper-reductionist, rigidly scientific person. And the path that my life has woven through high performance sport. I used to coach the Canadian national team for sport climbing. I was myself an internationally ranked athlete. I spent a large part of my life in sports psychology and high performance sport as an athlete, as a coach. It's a lot of what has imbued me with some of the skills I use in my therapeutic practice now. But when I arrived to catastrophic burnout that led to many other things, I was as staunchly against religion and spiritualism as one could really be. But through a sequence of different things in my career leading to burnout, my career and life leading to burnout, not the least of which was patterns of trauma repression and emotional suppression that were very effective, it landed me in a place where a death in my family of my grandfather was a very important person in my life. And when I came onto the scene of the injury that eventually led to him dying, something fundamental in me broke. It was the final straw. It was too much to hold without feeling anymore. And through navigating his passing, he actually chose to end his life with maids. Was the second person in Canada ever to actually choose that path, which is beautiful, I think. And it was actually I felt like a real gift for him to be able to choose death with dignity through that lens, and for our family to honor him and his free will there, as opposed to the so frequent, so globally slow decay that is a big part of how we leave this plane for many people. He got to really choose his way out, which was important for him. But in the aftermath of that, I went, of course, straight back to patterns of emotional repression. And I used to have a part that swallowed the emotion down. And my belief now is that that was the final swallow that overburdened my entire enteric nervous system, my soul, my emotional self, to a place where that all broke through and broke me. To get a little graphic, I basically awoke at 4 a.m, a week or so after his passing, and I took a shit the size of a football. No joke. Like, I had to cut it up to send it down. And I was like, what the hell just happened to me? What is happening? And then I went back to sleep. And when I woke up the next morning, I walked down the hall to go down the stairs to the main floor, and I almost collapsed. And I was like, okay, something's not right. And I went back to the kitchen to try to have some food. And the first bite of food that I ate was instantaneously a 6-hour sunburn moving through my whole digestive system. And this just worsened and worsened. And so over the course of about 3 days, I completely stopped eating. And then for more than 3 months, I didn't eat anything at all. And I, through this whole time, was going to every specialist. I went to 2 different hospitals, every clinician, gastroenterologists, multiple ones who could all run their same tests from a different place. And no test could label anything other than what we do in the medical system, which is describe things we don't have an answer for by giving them a label. And so I was, diagnosed with gastritis, which just means your guts are real sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, inflammation of the gut.
Yeah. And from that place, I basically began to wither away. I was probably the fittest and strongest I'd ever been in my life when this happened. And I crashed immediately into a slow fading process of withering away to being a husk of who I was. I was like 160 pounds or so at the time, and I withered down to about 100. So I lost like a third of my body weight nearly, which was pretty severe. And at the worst of it, after, months of fading and just basically subsisting on water and love, I was in and out of, I don't know how many days it was without waking, but having increasingly intimate conversations, which to me felt like with the gatekeeper of transition, the gatekeeper of death, where it was, okay, to myself, that was a really savage day with a lot of pain. And, today could be the day. Today could be the day that you die. You could let go today. You want to choose today? Yeah, no, let's do one more. Let's try one more day. We'll go to sleep, and we'll go back into the comatose space, whatever that is, and we'll see how it feels tomorrow. And I had that conversation a couple times, and then it got really serious with like, I don't think you have another day here. You actually have to really choose. And whatever was specifically unfolding in that time, there was a really clear moment of choice where I said, you know what, it's time to come out. This is too soon for me. I don't actually want to choose to die now. And the next day I was able to sit upright and to come back out and to be face to face with Kyra again and to be in the world from a new place. And it was a really long, slow process, refeeding and figuring out which things could then be tolerated again. My life-saving food with zero logic, according to what dietary specialists would say, was cashews. Cashews saved my life. So I came back to life with a steady diet of cashews, and then took years to regrow my strength and most of it back, at least. And that moment of choosing, that moment of deciding to come back to the world, sort of shattered my illusions about most of who I was and how I had been. It was a really confronting experience of recognizing the frailty and fragility of my life, the fact that more existed than I allowed myself to be open to or to be curious about. And it really set me on the path towards a more effective approach to my personal healing and to opening and reconnecting to emotions, and all the healing that transpired from there that led to eventually my work personally in psychedelic assisted therapy and eventually landing in somatic therapy and these kinds of things as well. That was the first 3 months of our relationship.
Wow,
I
that's
re-
intense.
Can you describe when you broke up with him in that process?
I definitely did not. This makes me reflect, and also just I feel like it's been in the air lately, and maybe like astrologically as well, with the year of the snake coming to an end and coming into this year of the horse. But my favorite teachers, and as Adyashanti, speaks to just like these moments of grace. And the moments of grace can only come in and can only come through when we've been through so much, right? There's like, we're exhausted, we've been fighting or working towards something really hard or trying to reach for something. And then it's like we have to give up and just put down all our weapons, or put down everything, or maybe in this case, sort of face death, right? And then just allow ourselves the stillness and the openness to be prepared to receive grace. And that's when we have these spiritual awakenings or these moments of opening. And so I love that concept. And I think about that when I hear your story, Matt. And at the time of meeting Matt, I had some spirituality woven in my yoga practice and these kinds of things. And I knew that I was called to that, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself spiritual or spiritual teacher or anything like that. And that grew, and that emerged for me as well in kind of the last 7 years, and just sort of blossomed and grew. And with each challenge or with each moment of where you're just pushing, you're working through something, you're really working it, and maybe you're doing the shadow work, or there's all these things coming at you, and then you have to put everything down, and then you receive the moment of grace. And so there's been these little moments.
I'm so curious because you both, were you a physiotherapist at that time?
Yep.
So you both are very embodied people working with the body and also helping other people learn how to live in their bodies in different ways. And so how do you see that sort of foundation of the physical, the very embodied, the earth elements kind of like beginning to grow into this more spiritual, ethereal, air and ether kind of space that you two both are very comfortable in?
I would love to translate that for the folks at home. When Harmony and I both had we could define this in different ways, but traumatizing early experiences as teenagers with psychedelics, or as teenagers, we uncovered trauma through our psychedelic journeys, which was very interesting. Did the two of you have that background, or were healing journeys through psychedelics something that is new to you as adults after your relationship paradigm?
Basically, through our, like, both Kyra and I, in our youth, right? We had this whole career, this whole chapter in high performance sport. Kyra was an incredible aerialist and circus acrobat, and she did gymnastics at a high level for a long time and was a teacher there as well. For me, it was competition rock climbing. That embodiment, that depth of physical embodied awareness was no question a fascination and an inspiration for the eventual path that led us to physiotherapy and somatic therapy and body work in my case. And growing up in the culture that we do, living in the West, coming from families indoctrinated by the limiting systemic perspectives on what reality truly is, you're not given the gifts of perspective unless you chance across a book or you find yourself at a rave or who knows what else. There's 100 ways to awaken. But our gradual process in working with our physical bodies with a high degree of obsession.
Yeah.
High performance athletics rewards obsession, right? I was obsessed with climbing for more than 20 years and Kyra with circus or gymnastics in a similar way. Eventually, we spent enough time so obsessed that there was a lot of physical injury, a lot of physical pain in the body that needed to be worked through. For me, I came to this through my own personal physical injuries. For Kyra, she studied physiotherapy and was called that direction to begin with. But through accessing and deepening our awareness of how to heal the physical ailments of the body, the deeper you go into that, the more you begin to recognize there's a limit. Doesn't matter how skilled you are. It doesn't matter right now, at least, what technology you have. There's a limit to the regeneration and the healing that can be achieved in the physical body, unless you're also starting to weave in somatic tools with mental and emotional and maybe spiritual connection as well. Growing up in the West, we are spiritual orphans by and large. We're either given default religions that often come with a lot of baggage or don't resonate with people for one reason or another. And so the pursuit of genuine spirituality or authentic spirituality to the individual is not easy to access. I'd say it's even taboo in a lot of ways, right? And so for me, I had an allergy to it for the longest time until I got to a place where I was physically broken down so far that I regained access to the emotional experience of life. And my gateway in was a deep investment in meditation. I had to connect to an entirely different experience of consciousness without altered state consciousness through, say, psychedelics or breathwork or anything like that, just through meditation. I had a couple experiences that so fundamentally broke me from consensus reality through meditation practice that I got more curious. And once I got more curious, I was able to start to welcome through a bigger perspective and more curiosity about this whole human organism and how it really deeply works, not just through the lenses of what I've been told already. And so body led to mind and the curiosity of consciousness in my case, which then connected to a deepening of the subtleties of the awareness of the physical body and how intricately and intimately woven all of those pieces are for every single person. And the degree to which we are unconscious of those threads is going to determine how limited we are by our trauma or by our culture or by our family of origin in whatever way, because there's gifts, but there's a lot of limiting things that come in for each of us too. And by and large, we're encouraged to stay asleep to those and their impact upon us in our lives. And so the longer we've worked with supporting people physically, the more it's become essential to offer a container that welcomes in the evolution of the entire person, not just limited through this lens of your gastrocnemius muscle on the right side of your calf is actually a big problem today. So we're going to really attend to that. What we see more and more clearly, the longer we've worked in physical healing support for people, is that the body is this container that stores the emotion we're not allowing through. It's a roadmap of the physical, emotional, psychospiritual, traumatic events that have not been fully processed or fully integrated. And the behavioral patterns that radiate out from those hard experiences in life that shape our personality, those are active, living things within us, behind our consciousness. And unless we do the work, and there's many ways to access it, to become conscious of that unconscious material, we will forever be limited and governed by the wounds of our past. And I guess that's where we go into the spiritual dimensions of stuff. But
well, it's interesting because I feel like, and I would love to also hear Kyra's experience of this, but I feel like there's different kind of roads and modalities. And for me, the Ram Dass was the kind of the model for me, is that I'd started with psychedelics, had some re-traumatizing experiences, and then went to pranayama and yoga to understand and heal and integrate.
Mm.
And I'm hearing that there was a kind of an opposite but equal path for you. And that's fascinating.
It's interesting because I feel like I was very spiritually aware from a young age. I was raised in that environment, in that culture, in that understanding. I mean, different, maybe spiritual paradigm than I live in now, but very sensitive to like the spirit realm and like angels and
Oh, your mother's
entities
a
and
quirky girl.
yeah, my mom's like ultra weirdly spiritual. So that was like the water I drank.
Yeah.
So when like everything I've done actually has always had that lens to it, which is kind of fascinating. But I want to hear Kyra. I know you like also really do this like amazing rib cage thing that I still am like dying to have done to me.
Well,
Tell us about the emotions in the body.
yeah, sure. I just wanted to touch on one other thing with the spirituality. You were raised with spirituality, and I was raised not like anti-spiritual at all, actually. My mother is an amazing human being, and she always had this energy of like, you can believe anything you want to believe, and anything you want to believe could be true. And just this beautiful openness in her. And so although I wasn't raised with specific spiritual beliefs, I also felt like I had a similar experience in that I was experiencing things as a child where I felt like I had real access to those realms. And I was quite young. I had trouble sleeping at night because I would just be hanging out with spirits in my room and
See,
did
this
not
is
really
the connection
know
that I was talking about.
what to do about them. And
Me too.
they scared me a little bit. And I would tell my parents, like, there's stuff going on in my room. Like, there's these things. I don't know what they are. There's people. They're doing stuff. I don't know. And my parents would just say, oh, you just come sleep in our bed. And sometimes they'd find me in the bathtub, sleeping in the bathtub in the morning. I would move rooms because they were really active in my room in particular. I was like, I'm just going to go sleep with the light on in the bathroom. It's easier for me.
Yeah.
And then I had imaginary friends, which I believe are actually connection to spirit, and the children are they just have a beautiful ability to access all of this. So anyways, I did have that kind of connection when I was younger as well, but just maybe didn't have the framework for it. As a teenager, I used to go to this store. It was like a witchcraft store, and I would save up all my allowance, and I would sneak in there. Like, I wouldn't tell my parents that I was going to buy these books, and there were books on how to talk to spirits and how to meet your guides, and I would use my allowance to buy these books, and I would hide them under my bed.
That's amazing.
So like there was this calling, right? And this draw for that. But there was maybe like, I just didn't really understand where that really fit, because that wasn't part of my world. It wasn't what my friends were doing. It wasn't, what my family was really up to as well. So it was really beautiful to remember. So now I diverge back into the body. The way I treat the body is really different. I feel like I use my physiotherapy tools, absolutely, and those are really important, and I'm grateful for them, and I stay within my scope of practice when I'm doing my physiotherapy practice. But something that I've learned over the course of the last 10 years is that nothing is as simple as just one body area being injured, having this diagnosis, because this one body area being injured is going to impact your whole system. So if your ankle's sprained, you may shift your rib cage over, which then shifts your head over. And if my rib cage is shifted over, this is going to impact how my energetic centers are aligning, right? Or if my head's over here, it's going to impact how I can connect, how I can ground through my feet. So, and also just the weight, the actual biomechanics of the body. And then psychologically as well, when our rib cage is compressed or tense, it can create disconnection in our nervous system. So then we can go into a bit of like this fight or flight and sort of just remain in that fight or flight. When I work with the body, I don't just look at this one ankle sprain injury. I'm looking at the ankle sprain, and then I'm looking at, what's going on energetically for this person. And I do that through touch, through my hands, through manual therapy, but also through feeling, and then the mental body too. And I'm not a psychotherapist. I meet the person where they're at, and I can feel in their body when they're speaking about what's just been running for them in their life. And with this injury, I can feel what happens in their body, right? And so just bringing awareness and attention to that, and then actually supporting that person in realigning those energetic centers, as well as the physical and biomechanical pieces that can create alignment, right? And it's a physical alignment, and it's an energetic alignment as well. And when we are aligned, then we can embody. This goes back to your question, Russell, is just like embodying your highest expression, how you want to be in the world. And when our body is misaligned, or we feel we're off our center, or energetic centers are not aligned, then it's really hard to do that. We can't necessarily feel like our full whole selves. So it's bringing the body back to wholeness so that we can operate from wholeness.
It does feel like we're in a zeitgeist now where physical medicine in the West is coming to grips with a kind of a holistic approach energetically and emotionally that, say, Chinese medicine has been comfortable with for thousands of years.
Absolutely.
And we're just this year having to explain this to our audience, that this is a thing that you may not be aware of. Whereas, like, that's an absurd notion in Taiwan. Like, you go in, you take your national service card in Taiwan, and you go to your acupuncturist once a week, like everyone else does. And for $1, you get cupping done and energetic work, and they'll use herbs to awaken things energetically based on, what your toe is like.
I mean, and what a different paradigm to think like, oh, I'm having a cough or congestion, I must be holding grief or sadness, or
and we're going to put a needle in your toe for that.
Yeah, and I'm feeling a lot of like rage or anger coming up, so something's going on with my liver, right? Like to have this connection between our organs and our emotions and our fascia and our body, and recognizing that we have energy moving through our body and around our body that we're not even really aware of.
Yeah. And what Matt and I believe is that like each person is their own healer, right? We don't heal them. We guide and we support them in understanding and deepening their awareness of their own healing capacity. And sometimes that does involve supporting someone physically, right? So if you're doing a realignment or readjustment, or energetically, but inside of them, there's everything already there. We're not adding anything. We're just helping clear the path, clear the way.
Yeah.
And equipping them with tools that are possible to take forward in life with you, that empower you to, as we've said before, embody your highest expression. The tools of consciousness, the tools of perspective, the tools of awareness, the tools of re-embodiment. And there are so many beautiful tools one can choose to start with or continue to work with. I know both of you come from a background of deep immersion in yoga, and there's so much wisdom in that tool set, for lack of a bigger word, that touches into so many places. But for many people, yoga is just a hard no. So if they're not willing to do that, we can meet them in all these different places. And as Kyra's describing, meet them where they are and offer them something powerful, no matter where they are, that's going to help them to move towards what they share with us is important to them, with how they want to access healing in the broadest sense of the word, which means growth, which means transformation and transcendence of limiting beliefs and limiting familial structures or culture and beyond, right? So we're really grateful and empowered at this time to be in the West, waking up to the reality that in many ways, our cultural and systemic structures got many important things very wrong. And we're starting to admit that. Yeah. This whole idea that we can divide mind and body has to be one of the most absurd things that's ever been broadly taken on as true, right? And so much of what we help people with is just getting rid of this block.
Just reconnecting
Just the beginning. It's like, okay, so below your chin is a tissue called the neck that connects you to the same parts of you that radiate down and access all your emotion and all of these sort of things. It's helping people to literally remember how to feel is probably the most common thing we help people with, to reconnect to the embodied experience of emotion feeling safe, to the embodied experience of a more nuanced relationship to the word pain. Pain is just information. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. It exists on a continuum, right? A severed arm is a very different experience than a stubbed toe, but it's just a spectrum of sensory information. And when we describe everything as pain from an injury place, right? It's much harder to actually stay in connection and communication with our bodies and the wisdom they hold because we want to shut the pain down. And unfortunately, the stubbed toe that you take an aspirin for very quickly becomes the divorce that you completely shut down with alcohol or any number of other experiences. And so, one of just shifting gears a little bit on this continuum, my practice as a somatic therapist is entirely centered around this kind of work, making re-embodiment a safe place to be for people who, for any number of different, totally valid reasons, from childhood experience or cultural conditioning, whatever it may be, adverse traumatic events, to begin to create a new place of safety in embodying their body and actually having a positive relationship with that so that they can regain access to a more vibrant and full experience of being alive in whatever way they want to choose to live. Because I'll tell you, from my path and my experience, I spent a lot of time in counseling, conventional counseling, and it can be beautiful. It can be so supportive. But particularly for minds like mine, there's a point at which I know my story that I'm telling you too well to ever have it go any different than the way I want it to go to protect myself from accessing the pain I'm hiding. And somatic therapy gets us out of the story and back into the body while still validating everything that we know and have experienced, but it really forces us gently to reconnect to the feeling experience. And as soon as that door opens, pain is discharged, energy is released, and transformational healing can begin.
That's exactly what's going on in psychotherapy today. In the fourth movement of psychotherapy, it's all about, instead of re-traumatizing with narrative, getting into somatic therapy to get trauma out of the body. And it's absolutely a movement happening in therapy today.
Like so much therapy is about that now because they realize they can't divorce the body from the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also like how I've been trained in my coaching program as well. It's very somatically, unconsciously, emotionally, and like using the body as the doorway to that emotion, to that unconscious, which is exactly what you're talking about. So then my question is this, because I have this really interesting observation and like from my personal experience going, training like as an elite yoga athlete at a very high level in the Ashtanga yoga where you're, practicing 2 hours a day and doing all of this crazy stuff with your body.
If you're not doing 7, you're not doing it hard enough.
In a weird way, it's like you think you're embodied because you're so in your body, because you're using your body so much to such an extreme point. And I'm sure you can both relate to this, but you're almost doing it so that you're not able to feel what's happening at a more subtle emotional level. And there's something very profoundly transformative that happens when you stop like kind of, I'm going to say abusing, but abusing, using, working your body to the brink of exhaustion like a machine, like a tool, and you treat it like a living, breathing animal or organism and start to listen to the wisdom that's there at the subtlest level. And I would love to just hear your experiences with that because I think it's so emotional and so transformative when that happens.
Yeah. Well, you can become addicted to anything.
Yeah.
Right. And addictions, some of my somatic therapy trainings, I've done several, but some of my somatic therapy training is through Gabor Mate's compassionate inquiry professional training. And he has a great line that says, when it comes to addiction, we don't say why the addiction. We say why the pain. Because the addiction is doing something good for you. And it's always stopping some kind of pain. So in your case, without making too many assumptions, this profound obsession and addiction to this yogic experience had beauty all over it. But as you're describing, also was keeping you away from some important recognitions or feelings, these kinds of things. Then, I became 8th best in the world at squeezing really hard on tiny holds so that I could push all the emotion down inside.
Right?
Also, it was some of the most beautiful experiences in my life, incredible teachers and camaraderie with my teammates. And it created a whole career path for me. It was incredible.
Yeah.
But it perhaps delayed me accessing important things, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to speak to your experience with that at all, Kyra.
Please.
I feel like the body has a way of telling us when we need to shift something. And so what I notice in my practice and with myself is that, we'll get injured or something will start to bother us when the body is speaking and it's saying, hey, I need you to pay attention. Maybe I need you to slow down. Maybe I need you to switch gears for a little while. Like maybe you're rushing your seasons. The way I always say is like we have seasons that we operate in. And so then sometimes if we're not taking our hibernation season or a winter season, and we're just trying to push that, the injury will come or the discomfort in the body, and the body will ask. And it doesn't mean that you need to stop doing your sport or stop doing your thing, right? Maybe it's that you do it differently or you do it with a different intention or different energetic awareness. And maybe there's some modifications or there's too much of one thing. And so, yeah, I think the body tells us, and it is our greatest teacher, actually. So we just have to keep listening to it. And
cultivating space where that listening is possible. Because the truth is, whether you're coming at it through athletics or coming at it through an obsessive relationship with your work or television or any number of other things, we cannot hear all the information, hear, feel, or sense the information coming through this incredible hypersensitive antenna that our body-mind system is. We can't hear it if we're in the deafening roar of constant movement in life, mentally moving or physically moving. So the simple act of cultivating space for stillness is a profound practice. Just so that you can dedicate time to feeling into your body, dedicate time to listening to those messages coming through, and frankly, becoming more literate. We called our business body language in part because of this, is because every single person has the same hardware. There's subtle differences in how all the systems work and all of this, but learning to actually understand the language of your body is something we are not given in our culture. We're not given access to the difference between, physical sensation and emotional language from an external source or an internal source. We don't know how to parse the signal from the noise of life. And then the pace of it all, we certainly aren't, we don't grant ourselves permission to be with silence or contemplation or any other sort of restorative, passive activity that gives us the space to process. One of the big. This is a bit of a mental point, but a really cool and powerful practice that has supported a lot of good decision making in my life is this conscious relationship to your unconscious mind. And when you are working on a thing, that could be an art project or a business project, a problem in a relationship, it doesn't matter what it is. The more you sit and think about it and work on it consciously, the less you're going to get done. Everyone's had the experience of taking a shower and suddenly having a euphoric moment of clarity or a great insight. And the reason this happens is because when we stop focusing with our conscious mind, our unconscious mind got straight to work on it. And it actually specializes in nonlinear problem solving, creative insight, and all sorts of other cool stuff that we don't give ourselves access to because we don't take time away from our stuff, whatever that is, to just be with presence rather than a project of some kind.
Something that this is just reminding me of this piece as well with the body. And actually one of my patients the other day asked me, well, how do you do it? Like, how do you know when someone's off? You just look at them and then you just know, like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And I said, well, it's a little more complex than, just looking. It's actually feeling, and it's tapping into all of our senses. And this again goes back to the child the child mind and the imagination and the heart of the child, and that we can tap into all these different senses and really feel. And so when I touch someone's body, I feel their story and I feel what is happening underneath my hands is not just this muscle is tight. It's also, wow, I feel, and I sometimes will notice it in my own body. Oh, I feel some sadness here. Or something really old. There's a really old pattern here. Or I will even maybe receive an image of like, maybe like a grandfather or a grandmother, or like there's some other attachments there. And so I believe we actually all have this ability, that we all have these superpowers or whatever wizard powers, and that it just takes us getting out of our own way, and sort of like what Matt and I were talking about is the disconnect, like that we're so disconnected, the head and the heart and even the gut too, and it's just recreating those connections and then coming back into the feelings, how we feel, and becoming extra hypersensitive, allowing ourselves the time to feel our body and to listen because the body tells a story. And so when that client asked me that question, I was like, well, it's not that I just know when I look at you. Ask the body, and the body tells me. The body tells me the story. And so that's what we're teaching as we work with people, is we're learning the language of their body, but then we're also teaching them how to learn the language of their own body and how to listen.
I'd like to be a little cautious here and careful, knowing the both of you and knowing your stories a bit. I feel like I know the two of you both have some trauma and loss that you've worked through and healed through. But I wonder if you could speak to these things came up for you, and how did they come up for you, and how did you work through them?
Mm-hmm. How are you still working through them?
Yeah, and this is the truth of it, Harmony, is this is the life path. And you either choose to turn towards yourself in an honest and confronting and vulnerable and brave way, and you walk the path of healing until you die, or you don't. And for most of human history, by and large, we have chosen not to. But we've reached a place in our civilization where I believe, unless all of us is willing to turn towards and more deeply know ourselves, we're in a lot of trouble. And so, for me, recognizing there's only so much I can do to positively affect change in the world through my work or through my pursuits in life, I came into recognition that what I could certainly work on was embodying a frequency that would support others accessing healing and wanting to turn towards themselves in deeper and deeper ways. And as I shared earlier, like my wake up call, my awakening experience was through a very intimate experience close to death. And on the other side of that, I began to question everything. I began to get curious about everything. When I could not get an answer of any type of satisfaction from scientific Western explanation, I turned towards different inquiry, right? I recognized, okay, maybe I've got patterns here I need to address. It's the classic wounded healer's paradigm, right? It's every single person in the healing arts of any kind has a story similar to mine. But what I began to recognize in being willing to open, in being willing to feel, was that there was a more vibrant, beautiful, and wondrous world that I denied myself access to. And once through practices like meditation, through experiences, because we came to experiences with psychedelics quite late. We've been studying and working with them ourselves on our healing path for a very long time now. But at the time, I didn't have the tripping mushrooms experience in high school. Like that wasn't a part of my path. And so when I began to access deeper realms of consciousness through breathwork and through meditation and through my also obsessive chapters in yoga, I approached every part of my life with a calmer disposition and a deeper curiosity. And that has just continued to call me forward, because as I began to be able to approach the world with curiosity rather than fear, with softness rather than constriction, life completely changed. And my priorities in life completely changed. And, Kyra and I have pretty different language and perspectives with which we describe our spiritual experiences ourselves. And I think that's really beautiful. But for me, spirituality is represented by a willingness to stay open to an undefinable question on deeper and deeper levels that transcend both language or knowing, and sitting in the presence of humble curiosity that contains multitudes of experiences from life and personal experience as much as altered states and transpersonal experience. I feel that my path through life and going forward into realms of consciousness or spirituality are just shading in individual threads of a grand mosaic tapestry I'll never see the whole picture of until I die. And that's okay. What I see is so beautiful. It inspires me to keep exploring. And so the first thread that I saw when meditating, I suddenly drifted out and above my body and looked back through the roof of a house to where I had left myself behind. It completely shattered my illusions of what I thought was possible. You can call that a hallucination or anything else, but it's totally irrelevant because it changed how I came back to approaching the world. And there's no question that somatic therapy has been a powerful component for me in, most importantly, integrating these other experiences. Altered state breath work and carefully supported psychedelic work can be life transforming. But the integration of it is way more nuanced and way more tricky than we mostly are talking about in our cultural evolution of our relationship to those materials. And so the somatic therapy stuff has been absolutely essential for me in being able to step into the healing and actually carry it forward rather than having some new perspective on it and then just kind of falling back into the default ways of being, which is the normal way that things often will go. I don't know if that's really an answer to your question.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer.
Yeah.
How do you explain your spiritual journey, Kyra?
Emergence. How do you explain and how
You use
how would
different
you
language,
describe,
Matt said. So I want to hear.
describe your spiritual emergence?
What's it like for you?
Oh, wow.
What's it been like?
Yeah, again, continue the journey always continues. It never ends. I believe in reincarnation and that, we just continue and we continue to work towards the pieces that we're here to work towards. And my kind of initiation into this spiritual awakening or spiritual emergence is likely the first time I worked with psilocybin. And so this was a personal journey that Matt and I actually took together. It was the first time I'd taken any psychedelic and as well for him. And yeah, and it was actually, as Matt was describing, almost like this emergence or tapestry of presence and awareness of everything that is around and beyond. And so I believe that, psilocybin at that point, it never really left me, that memory, I integrated that into my body, that presence, that awareness that there's something more than what we're just being kind of handed when we're children. And there's so much more. There's so much more. And so it was just this huge expansion for me. And then after that, I started to get more into energy work and kind of understanding that, my own physical body and my spirit and my mind were all connected, tapping into that. My yogic practice has been like a major, major spiritual awakening for me. And then, just continued personal work with psychedelics has been amazing. And then, like Matt said, the integration So we can have like these spiritual awakenings and these openings, but if we don't embody them, then really, like, what are they? And they don't really become anything. And so my deepest embodiment has come from my shamanic training. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge my teachers. And I have had many, many teachers. But I just want to acknowledge the Pacha Mesa tradition and my teachers, Robin and Darcy, from that tradition, and also for Matt, and also the Heart of the Healer. And so this is a tradition from the Andes, and it is a very, very old version of shamanism. However, it's been brought into more of a contemporary space to then be brought to areas like the Western world, where we really, really need to reconnect to nature, the natural world. And so, having these big spiritual emergences through psychedelics was absolutely incredible and eye-opening and healing. And then we need to remember that actually that is coming from our natural world. We can access that all the time, anytime. And it's the connection that we have with Mother Earth, with Pachamama, that cultivating that connection is what brings us back.
We were just listening to this last night in the show How to Change Your Mind. Is this notion of gateway drugs leading to addiction. And yet, for me personally, plant medicine has only been something that has stayed with me and been something that I can access depending on my mindset. Very similar to a spiritual emergence, that when you have a spiritual emergent experience, you can access it if you just give yourself some space.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no notion like, oh, I got to get my next psilocybin hit or I'm going to freak out. That's ridiculous. But go ahead.
But no, I'll just carry your thread a little further. I mean, like, the truth is that the literature that does exist from a Western researched scientific standpoint on most psychedelics, not all, there are some exceptions, but most psychedelics like psilocybin, for example, they have anti-addictive properties.
Mm-hmm.
All of the research is showing that to be the case. So I don't think there's much of any concern. Now, as I said to Harmony earlier, you can become addicted to anything, right? If you want to, or if you're conscious of your behavior. And there are some important exceptions to that rule, right? Like ketamine and 3-MMC, these psychedelics have profound addictive properties, and it's really important to be aware of that. But what matters, no matter what material or plant you're working with, is that you're turning towards it through an experience of right relationship, where we're working with these beautiful, powerful, sacred materials from a desire to turn towards and open to more feeling, not to shut feeling down and turn away from things. And so, with psilocybin, I mean, like, for many people, one journey of decent strength with that medicine is enough for their entire lifetime to live in wonder. And there's plenty of research showing the value and efficacy for end-of-life care. And it's very specifically for people, the success of, say, alleviating death anxiety for a cancer terminal patient is the occasioning of a mystical experience, having something spiritual come through as a part of their journey. And Kyra and I certainly believe that, used the right way, approached safely, psychedelics are just as valuable for the betterment of well people as they are for those who have serious illness or terminal conditions.
Yeah, I have a question, because you both mentioned your teachers and your lineage and this passion that you have for shamanism and working in this field of shamanic traditions. And I remember texting with you when I was in LA and you were just gotten back from 3 days like solo journey in the mountains. And then like 2 weeks ago, Matt was like 7 days just like off alone in the woods. Tell us about what is going on over there.
So as Kyra was describing, we've completed an apprenticeship in the Pacha Mesa tradition. And it's important to distinguish that, there's a lot of in many cases, important talk about cultural appropriation that's in the ears these days. And of course, I am a Irish, Celtic, English boy on the other side of this camera. And I approached this apprenticeship with very mixed feelings, very awake to the concerns of cultural appropriation and still with some like hesitation to adopting or co-opting a spiritual worldview from somewhere else. Obviously, you know, like I've lived through yoga and connected to my spirit through these things. And so personally, speaking from my voice, I think the word cultural appropriation denies the reality of the human condition of needing a relationship to spirit and coming up in the West, not having access, being a spiritual orphan. Part of my curiosity was just, well, I'm going to sample another experience of a perspective on spiritual realities. And what really spoke to both of us in this tradition in particular is that it's an earth-honoring philosophy first. And all that really means is that it celebrates and deeply connects to a living animistic relationship to all natural elements of what Mother Earth is. So our pursuit of the Pacha Mesa tradition was in part in support of our explorations of these altered state experiences through meditation, through breathwork, and through psychedelics to have just a different perspective on understanding what we were experiencing there. And obviously, like, you know, you can read a lot, you can experience a lot, but having a different lens through which to approach understanding something can be so transformative. And so the Pacha Mesa tradition and the cultures that have carried it for millennia as an oral hand-to-hand tradition have worked with sacred plant medicines since time immemorial. And the medicine of the high Andes is in large parts Washuma or San Pedro cactus. And so, you know, that medicine is woven into the culture the same way that language is, the same way that so many of these other shamanic traditions are, and it informs some of the spiritual perspectives. And how natural, how beautiful that it's just simply, Oshuma is a master plant, a master teacher, has turned them to the nature of life, being life itself as an expression on earth, through us, around us, and as all of us as a collective. And so we were looking to understand and connect to spiritual dimensions from a conscious place, informed by traditional roots that have thousands of years of experience, both working with plant medicines, but also directly and actively living through and engaging with spiritual dimensions of life through a lens of beauty. And compared to many traditions, with almost a complete absence of harm that's related to the religious or spiritual communities, because it's so centered around the individual personal relationship to the mother, to Mother Earth itself, and life as an expression across Earth, which I think is so beautiful and so humble, because it takes so many of these complexes away.
We were given a direct transmission and experience of beauty and love through yoga or through your shamanic tradition.
Yeah.
And with so much enthusiasm on the part of that teacher or that person.
Yeah.
And so when we went to India, we paid for that experience. They loved teaching us and encouraged us to go back. That's not appropriation.
It's very much the same experience for us, but being carried north is actually, it's actually a part of, like, this gets into some pretty wild territory, but there's essentially a prophecy that comes from this cultural lineage that says that according to the culture, predicted the arrival of the colonial genocide before it happened, knew that that would happen, kept the tradition alive in secret in the high Andes for hundreds of years before bringing it back down into the culture to reseminate it into the population. And alongside that, there was also a prophecy that at a certain point, there would come a point in time where it had to actively move north into the Western world. And that's the epoch that we're in now. So this was very, as you're saying, Russell, this is a very it's a gift. It's being brought forward. And it's a lens through which to rewire your consciousness in a lot of ways, which I think is so beautiful.
Well, and to also be passed on to women specifically. So that's also really beautiful, because that is where we're going here, right? So,
yes.
yeah. The thing I just want to speak to with the shamanic practices are ritual and ceremony. Like we've really lost that in our culture. We've lost the connection to ritual and ceremony, and you can see it in the youth and kids, right? Where there's not that same connection to the natural world and also to each other. That ritual and ceremony brings us together and it connects us. And there's points in time, where particular moments in time are really honored and cherished and that are sacred. And we've lost that. And so, as human beings, I believe that we need to return to a space of ritual and ceremony, regardless of your belief systems. We can all come together and we can create a collective because in the end, we actually all want the same thing. We want connection, community, love. So can we not just come together and recreate that? And so the ritual and the ceremony piece is really important. And Matt and I have been running some beautiful breathwork ceremonies to really bring some of that back in. And this idea of collective healing and the energy that can transpire and that can impact and influence each other as well in these realms are amazing. It's really interesting. We set a date for a ceremony and people register and they'll all sort of come in with a similar type of intention, even though we haven't told them what the ceremony is about.
Yeah.
So that's beautiful, right? We're all healing as a collective together. And so my healing is also your healing and vice versa. And then the other part that I wanted to bring in with the shamanic tradition that we study is it brings a physical representation. So a mesa is a mesa means table. So it's like an altar or a cloth and it has different objects on it. And this is just the physical representation of our spiritual connection to something greater. And so this is something that we can sit at, we can meditate at, we can work with dynamically, but ultimately it's like the spiritual connection is actually inside of you. And this is just the physical representation of that.
So I just had a call with another shamanic practitioner, and we were talking a little bit about her studies over the last 20 years with different lineages of shamanism and setting up the container properly in a way that is like safe. And so we talked a little bit about she would open with chanting or a prayer and then closing in a particular way and making sure there's certain spirits that are guarding the doors, holding them open or keeping them closed. How do you, as practitioners in this lineage, set up that container from a spiritual kind of perspective?
So, first of all, we call this like a high ceremony or a ceremony that would be representative of big protective spiritual energy that is deeply connected to a big healing collective experience. That's the best way I can describe it. And so we need to clear the space energetically beforehand. Matt and I, if we're running any kind of ceremony, and this could be like a meditation, this could be a breathwork, it could be a movement ceremony, any kind of ceremony, we're going to be doing a clearing of the space. And so that can involve like burning sacred herbs or plants. It will also involve us sitting and doing like a meditation style connection with spirit. And so we're tapping in, and I work with my guides and other spiritual forces, gods and goddesses, and got connections with the primary directions and the tradition as well. And so call in all these different guides, guardians, animal spirits that we have connections with to clear the space, to inform us. And then again, like just it sounds like a simple thing, but setting it up so that it is aesthetically beautiful, right? and creating this like clean and clear energy so that when people come into this space, like they recognize that, like they see like this is sacred. This is something to come into that has been prepared for them and prepared for their healing. The other thing that we'll often do is offerings, right? So we'll do offerings to the land. Sometimes, most often, we'll create a despacho, which is an offering, gratitude offering. And it's this beautiful
gazpacho?
Not
despacho,
Despacho.
not a gazpacho.
Well, you should have gazpacho as well. I think
No,
that
no.
would be really nice.
no.
I didn't know we could do that.
Yeah. And it uses elements from the natural world, from the land. It could be tobacco. You can
Tomato.
work with cedar, tomato. You can work with tomato. You know, in Peru, they work with all sorts of different things, and each offering has like a different representation. And so we're just really showing gratitude for the ability to even do this work on this land. And we create this collage with all these different ingredients. And each time we're praying, right? We do a lot of prayer, a lot of offerings before we do ceremony.
And they're chanting like in a particular
actual
language or?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on who we're working with, right? Depending on the type of ceremony we're having, there might be some different components. But personally, once the pre-ceremonial stuff is set and the space is beautiful, honoring how we move through the space, etiquette inside the actual space, I believe matters. So having people arrive in a sense of presence and encouraging them to move with intention and with care as they're going around the space. And when everyone arrives, I am a huge believer in the power and beauty of words to call people into attunement and to deepen our explorations in these kind of contexts. And so very often we'll lead some chanting, largely informed by yogic traditions, because both Kyra and I have backgrounds in that. The obvious power of simple mantra, toning, or humming brings us all into attunement and limbic resonance in a way that instantaneously changes the energy in the space and brings people into alignment. And traditionally, in healing ceremonies of any kind from most places all over the world, there's a circular formation where the energy has a flow left to right around the space, and there'll be a sharing circle where each individual is given the opportunity to describe why they're there. What are they hoping to access, connect to, feel, set free, and let go of, or transcend? And each person has an opportunity to do that at the start and at the close of the ceremony after the journey has taken place. And time again, just the basics of cultivating beauty in the space and tending to the energies in those ways will lay the foundation for a beautiful experience. Many people don't know how powerful altered state breathwork by itself can be. And there are so many tools and so many medicines that we can work with, and they're all beautiful when they're ceremonially approached. But just breath by itself, in particular, brings forth a community experience, a collective experience of moving energy and of accessing healing. I'm always awestruck by the vibration and the pulse and the frequency of collective healing that sort of crescendos and climaxes as it unfolds through the course of a breathwork journey. Over the hour or so people are building the intensity of their breath, there comes a moment when there's an invitation from us to set it free, whatever it is. The healing that needs to transpire, the grief that needs to be expressed, the anger that needs to be named and shouted, or the laughter that wants to fly. And it's like an avalanche.
Yeah. Well, tell everyone where they can find you if they want to deepen their, integration, experience of anything.
Yeah, and we've only touched into a small amount of what we actually do.
No, you guys do so much. It's like, how good.
So our business is called Body Language. We're located in Squamish in British Columbia, Canada. And if you go to trainbodylanguage.com, that's our website. It's Body Language on Instagram as well, or Train Body Language on Instagram as well. People can contact us there. I offer my somatic therapy support and psychedelic integration support virtually. So no matter where you are, there's easy support available. And I actually offer both of those services on a compassion pricing model.
Wow.
I want people to have access to it no matter what their financial situations are. And so it's like different prices according to what you can afford. And we believe it's really important to offer people that kind of support. Because the difference between a conversation sharing about your 5-MeO journey or some remembrance of trauma and a safe container to do that can be the difference between re-traumatization and transcendence. And not everyone is lucky to have access to communities like we ourselves have had that have supported us and held us in the ways that they have through the evolution of our healing path. Not the least of which is inside the container of our relationship, which is even more special. And
and you can access the physiotherapy side and holistic physiotherapy side on our website as well. And I also do virtual sessions and shamanic therapy as well. And shamanic therapy is really working on more of those energetic components. And there can be some guided meditation, some breath work within that as well. Yeah.
Well, I can't say enough about the two of you. I rave about you to everyone that I know. So I'm so glad that you came on the podcast today.
Yeah, well, thanks. The conversation was great.
Yeah, such a blessing to be in community with you and to be family with you too. We are so happy that you are here and that you enjoyed this episode. And if you want the full personal account of our experience, then you need to come into the Finding Harmony community because we are releasing a private episode that goes into much deeper detail of our psychedelic experience and journey. So if you love listening to these stories and want to hear about Russell's experience and my experience, we're doing that in a really beautiful, safe, loving community space. So I would invite you to come into the Finding Harmony community and you will find the episode there. I will be posting a link to this private episode right in the community space. And if you can't find it, you can always message me. And if you love these personal accounts, then let me know on Instagram. Send me a DM. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are and what your experiences have been with altered states of consciousness. As we come to a close, what really stands out for me from this conversation with Kyra and Matt is this reminder. The body is never random. It's never wrong. And it's never separate from our emotional states or our inner world. And so much of what they share points to this truth that healing happens when we slow down enough to listen, when we're able to become truly present and aware and work with the subtle sensation, the breath, the emotions, the thoughts, and the nervous system patterns, rather than trying to override them or ignore them or silence them. And when the body is met with curiosity and presence, it knows exactly how to reorganize itself. And that's something that I've found incredibly true in my own healing journey and also as I work with clients through the modality of spinal energetics. It really is incredible to watch somebody reconnect to that innate intelligence, that innate ability that is always trying to bring about balance and homeostasis and organization and health and healing and optimization within our own body system. And when I say body system, I'm not just talking about our physical body, but all of the bodies. In yoga, we call them koshas. In spinal energetics, they're energetic layers or energetic fields. And they're all existing within us and around us all the time. When we start to understand ourselves as a more expansive human, more expanded than just our physical being, healing can truly begin. And so if this conversation has you feeling curious about how your own inner states may be shaping your health, your vitality, your sense of aliveness or longevity, then take this as a gentle reminder that this is the last week to sign up for the masterclass that I'm offering with Angelica. And it is happening this week on March 7th. And this is an experiential space where you're going to explore your own connection to your body. You're not just going to sit there and listen. You are going to participate and move beyond, those limiting beliefs that are holding you back and come into a direct experience of reconnection with that innate healing intelligence that lives inside of you. So you'll find all the details in the show notes. And I just want to thank Matt and Kyra for their depth and their honesty and their heart and all of the magic that they bring to their work. And thank you for listening with presence all the way to the end of this episode. It's really, truly because you're here that we continue doing this work and having these conversations and opening up this space to a greater context of what is health and healing spiritually and physically and all of the layers and fields and bodies in between. So thank you again for being here with us. We love you. We appreciate you. And we cannot wait to connect with you next time. That's it. We've concluded another episode of the Finding Harmony podcast. I just want to thank you so much for doing the work that changes the world, starting with yourself. It truly does make a huge difference. Please make sure you have your automatic downloads turned on wherever you listen so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. I have so much more magic I can't wait to share with you. Lastly, if you're on Instagram, I love connecting and hearing from you. So come on over and say hello at Finding Harmony Podcast. And you can also come say hello to me personally at Harmony Slater Official. Thank you again for being here. I cannot wait to share more with you in our next episode.